Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode on the Sports Stories podcast. I'm your host, Seiji McSwain. Now I'm going to be going over my Week 12 predictions in this episode. Last week, I had a pretty good record. I only lost 3 games. Few of those were, that one with the Vikings, losing by 37. That one was pretty bad. I was a little calm. I was like, oh, if you're a betting person, get the Vikings on that because they were +1. I promise you, the sports books just know something that none of us know. Because, the Vikings were coming off a really big win against the Bills. The Cowboys were coming off a really big loss to the Packers. And they still had the Packers favored by 1. And then they went on and won by 37. So, something's up, okay? Something's up. But it's been a wild week 11. So, let's get right into Week 12 and we could talk about Week 11 as we go. Okay, so now for the first game, which is on Thanksgiving on Thursday, tomorrow morning, 9:30 p.m. Pacific time, or 9:30 a.m. Pacific time, and then 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We got the Bills at the Lions. Now the Bills just coming off of a win in Detroit against the Browns, which a lot of people didn't understand why they didn't just move the game to Cleveland, but the Bills most likely put it in Detroit because they're played Detroit this week, and so they probably just didn't want the Bills flying anywhere really. So just to kind of limit the possibility of them getting trapped somewhere, just put them in Detroit and then keep them there until Thanksgiving, where they play the Lions anyway. And the Bills did really good against the Browns. It did get a little bit close, but they played really well on Nick Chubb, really limiting him. I had him on fantasy. He had 9.7 points on fantasy for me last week against the Bills. It was pretty bad. He was just having a hard time, really playing against that defensive line, and they did really well against him. If I can pull up these stats here, but overall, it was a good game. It was a nice fight by the Browns. They really tried. They kept it close. It was an 8-point game. But looking at the stats here, the Bills, Josh Allen went 18 for 27, 197 yards, a touchdown. And then Devin Singletary went off 18 carries, 86 yards, and a touchdown. And James Cook had 11 carries and the same 86 yards, but no touchdown on that. And then Dawson Knox had 7 receptions for 70 yards. Gabe Davis, 5 receptions for 68 yards. Definitely were doing their thing there. And then defensively, they had 5 pass deflections, 8 tackles for loss, 1 sack, and 70 total tackles with no interceptions. Overall, pretty well. They limited Nick Chubb to only 19 yards on 14 carries. That's 1.4 yards per carry. They really limited Nick Chubb, who's an absolute stud. But on the passing offensive side, Amari Cooper is just absolutely destroying Jackson, the DB from Buffalo. Just absolutely destroying him, 113 yards and 2 touchdowns on the day, as well as Donovan Peoples-Jones, who Jackson was on, 61 yards on a touchdown. But overall, the Bills still have a really good, play style. They've looked a little bit worse, but, as we've seen from the Bills and Eagles, at this stage in the season, your players are getting kind of worn out. The Bills especially, a lot of injuries to the team. So hopefully, they recover as well, wishing them the best, but definitely the injuries have hurt the Bills, in this, time of the season, and you see a lot of teams start to wear down. This is, kind of the start of where we see it. But it is kind of basically the exact opposite for the Lions, even though they still have been hit by the injury bug. They've been playing really well. 3 straight wins, 1 at home against the Packers, 1 away against the Bears, and then another 1 away against the Giants. This time winning by 13, 31-18. They did really good. As a Lions fan, they had the lead for the majority of the game. The Giants were up 6-3 at one point in the game. And then the Lions really started taking the lead. And I was a little bit scared because usually as a Lions fan, you get to see them choke these leads. So I wasn't really content with a lead, really. But I mean, they still did their thing. The defense has been doing great the past 3 wins, limiting the Packers to 9 points, somewhat limiting the Bears. I mean, the Bears still have 30 points, which isn't the best stat, wise, but I mean, they somewhat limited through the air. The Bears really could not throw, that much. I mean, besides that one to Cole Kmet, I mean, he was wide open, but, and then against the Giants, they did spectacular against Saquon Barkley, limiting him to 22 yards on 15 carries. They couldn't tackle Daniel Jones, though. For some reason, they just let Daniel Jones run, which is a common thing with this Lions defense. They can't guard quarterbacks that are able to run, which is going to be a big spot here for against the Bills, where Josh Allen runs a lot. He's able to run out of that pocket, so and extend plays. So it's definitely going to be hard for the defense to cover that. But against the Giants, Jared Goff went 17 for 26, 165 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and was sacked 0 times. Pretty modest stat line, nothing much, but at least he got the job done there. And then Justin Jackson had a day, 9 carries on 66 yards, leading the team here in this one. And then Jamal Williams, 17 carries for 64 yards and 3 touchdowns, which extends him to 12 touchdowns on the season, making him the league leader in touchdowns. And DeAndre Swift still getting limited carries, 5 carries, only 20 yards and a touchdown. But I mean, he's still kind of doing his thing in the receiving game. He's just been really limited since, he still injured, in my opinion. And also just, he gets up to the red zone and then they give it to Jamal Williams. So it does kind of hurt him. But here, through the air, Amon-Ra St. Brown doing his thing, 7 receptions for 76 yards. But that was really about it. They are still missing Josh Reynolds. He is questionable for this one against the Bills, but most likely I see him being out. But still, I'm not really too sure. And then defensively, what a game. Okay, Aiden Hutchinson had a fumble recovery, interception, and I want to say, did he have a sack? I'm trying to look here. I don't think he had a sack. No, he had a pass deflection, 3 tackles, an interception, and a fumble recovery. Okay. But, still a great stat from him. That interception that he had, both interceptions that he's had on the season looked fantastic. He just reads the ball well, going out of zone, faking the blitz. It was a nice pull out here, and then he got the pick. And then now he did win NFC Defensive Player of the Week as well. And then Kirby Joseph also got an interception on the day, which was very big. That was a really good one. Basically sealed the deal for the Lions. Now the defense had 4 total pass deflections, 5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks on 69 total tackles. And again, those 2 interceptions, one from Aiden Hutchinson and one from Kirby Joseph. And they played the Giants really well, especially as with a team that had one of the worst rushing defenses in the league. They were able to stop one of the better running backs in the league. They weren't able to stop Daniel Jones, though. Vanilla Vic going off on him. Okay, he had 50 rushing yards on 7 carries, so that one was really tough. But I think that's definitely a point of attack that the Bills can exploit. Really, just having more rushing styles for Josh Allen, especially if the defense does kind of lock up through the air. Jeff Okudah is out for the Lions in this one. I'm not sure how much that is going to affect. He was out for the majority of the game against the Giants due to concussion. Yeah, and he's also out for this game due to concussion. Just big collision during the game kind of caused that. But overall, it's definitely going to be interesting to see the Bills locking up Nick Chubb. Them against Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift. That's going to be interesting to see if they're able to lock up both of those running backs and really stop the rushing game. And both offensive lines of the team have played really well. The Lions defense only allowed 17 sacks, and the Bills offensive lines only allowed 20 sacks. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do here. I feel like the secondary of both teams are going to be a big issue in how well the defense and how well both teams play in the game. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see. But as for this one, I do have the Bills winning by 3. I think overall they are a better team. As a Lions fan, I really want the Lions to win. They haven't won a Thanksgiving game in forever. Feels like, they're somewhat the laughing stock of national, or I guess of the United States when it comes to Thanksgiving. Nobody really watches the game; they just have it on, and it's like, oh, the Lions lost, right? And the one time in this season that the Lions get to be played on national television, besides Hard Knocks, maybe they get a win, and then they can and people will be like, oh, the Lions are winning, because I really haven't heard anybody being like, oh yeah, the Lions have a 3-game win streak, all I've heard from that Packers game, oh, Aaron Rodgers lost to one of the worst defenses in the league, oh, Justin Fields had a great game, but the Bears lost. With the Giants, nothing. I've basically heard nothing about that Giants-Lions game. So, maybe if the Bills win here, or not the Bills, but the Lions win here on a national stage, maybe this is what propels them and leads them further into momentum, this 3-game win streak. But the Bills, they're coming off a win against, the Browns. Maybe they rigged some things in Ford Field for them to be able to win. But I think overall, yeah, just the Bills are the better team here. But it is kind of a win-win situation for me. I'm happy if the Bills win because then I'm right on my prediction. But I'm also happy if the Lions win because, in all, I'm a Lions fan. But this is like only my second prediction where the Lions lose. I think the only one I had them losing was the Eagles won week 1, and that was it. I've had the Lions win like every game. So this is the second time I've had the Lions lose this season in my prediction. But let's go ahead and move on to the next game. Now, next up, we have the Giants at the the Cowboys. The Giants at the Cowboys. Divisional matchup here on Thanksgiving. Another big, annual thing. Cowboys game. Now the Giants again coming off that loss to the Lions, where they just didn't really play all too well. It just, wasn't really clicking for the run game. And, Wan'Dale Robinson he was going off. He's too fast for the Lions DBs. He was doing his thing, but ended up tearing his ACL on a play where he just was like tackled. Tackle went out of bounds, and then, he just landed awkwardly on his knee. And they're saying that he did have a torn ACL and has ended his season. And Kenny Golladay having his first reception of the season against the Lions. He actually had 2 of them, I think he had 2 receptions on the game, and the announcers are making a big deal out of it. They're like, oh, he's had 2 receptions in this game, more than he's had last year. They're going off. Giants fans were sarcastically cheering as Kenny Golladay got his first pass of the game. That was funny. But overall, it was an okay game played by the Giants. Really, just not much was happening. Daniel Jones went 27 for 44, 341 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. And Daniel Jones also had 7 carries on 50 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown, which this one was a little interesting game because I guess it was super windy. And after the touchdown score by Daniel Jones, they tried to attempt the extra point, but the kick went wide right, and it was a little bit blocked, but it was blocked a little bit by, I believe, I want to say John Kaminsky, but it was blocked a little bit, kind of made it wobble, but then the wind just made it fly over the curve was insane on the kick. And then Wan'Dale Robinson again, before he tore his ACL in that one, 100 yards on 9 receptions. Darius Slayton also had 86 yards on 5 receptions. So, both players did really good in that one. And then defensively, they had 3 pass deflections, 4 tackles for loss, 0 sacks, and 69 total tackles. No interceptions. I mean, overall, it just wasn't the best play by the Giants defense, who, other than that, I mean, they've played really well this season. I mean, they had a 7-2 record at the time of the game, and they were playing their hearts out, but I think they just didn't perform well enough. So, they did end up falling to 7-3 after this one against the Lions. And then as for the Cowboys, coming off of an absolute dismantling of the Vikings. I've never seen a game like this where, the Vikings seemed, the Cowboys were still heavily favored betting wise, but a lot of people thought this was going to be close. But even the TV station switched the game. They switched off the game because the Cowboys were winning that much. Dak Prescott basically almost perfect, 22 for 25, 276 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 0 sacks, a 139.3 QB rating, and a 93.2 QBR. They even put in Cooper Rush for a little bit of the game, where he went 4 for 5, 31 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Tony Pollard did his thing on Ezekiel Elliott's return game. Tony Pollard went 80 yards on 15 carries. Ezekiel Elliott had 42 yards on 15 carries and 2 touchdowns. Tony Pollard also did his thing through the receiving game, 109 yards, 6 receptions, and 2 touchdowns. They were doing their thing. Defensively, they had 13 QB hits, 4 pass deflections, 8 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, and 49 total tackles. This defense did great. The Vikings couldn't even fight back from what these guys were doing to them. The Cowboys were just delivering on all cylinders. It was just hard for the Vikings to really stop them. Now, as for this game, I do have the Cowboys winning by 4. This one does have a little bit of playoff implications, but I think the Cowboys is overall better team. The Giants really struggled against a Lions defense that didn't do all too well, or hasn't done all too well. So, obviously, I think the Cowboys have one of the better defenses in the league. So they should be able to basically have the same game that I think they had against the Vikings against the Giants. So, again, give me the Cowboys by 4. Now, the last Thanksgiving game happening on Thanksgiving night, we have the Patriots at the Vikings. The Patriots winning a close one against the Jets, winning 3-10. Overall, really bad game. But the Patriots defense held the Jets to a whopping 2.77 inches in the second half. They averaged 2.77 inches in the second half, which is pretty crazy for an entire defense to basically, I don't even know the length of a football. Let me actually look up the length of a football. Let me see here. So a length of a football is 11 to 12 inches. 11 to 12 inches. And the Jets averaged 2.77 inches in a game in the second half. That's crazy. That's not even an entire football. How does that even happen? Not even an entire football. That's not a yard. It's not like nobody stuck the hand out. Not even a football. They didn't even average a single football. They couldn't even, that's incredible to me. I was like, 2.77 inches. Let me see. No. I was like, is a football even 2.77? No. It's 11 to 12 inches. And the Jets only had 2.77 inches on offense. That's crazy to me. The Patriots, offensively, 23 for 27, 246 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, but was sacked a whopping 6 times. This game was definitely defensively oriented. Look at Damian Harris, 8 carries on 65 yards. Ramondre Stevenson did his thing through the air, 56 yards on 6 receptions, as well as Jacoby Myers, 52 yards on 4 receptions. Looking at the defense for the Patriots, 3 pass deflections, 7 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, and 55 total tackles. They were able to do their thing. They had multiple dropped interceptions. They had 3 dropped interceptions. Zach Wilson was just throwing it to them. which was pretty incredible. But man, I don't know, how did they get 10 then? Oh, never mind. They did have a touchdown on defense, but I believe that might have been a fumble recovery. Yeah, that was a fumble recovery by Johnny Smith. Had a fumble recovery for a touchdown. That might be on a kick return. Probably got that. But I mean, yeah, overall, just a pretty bad game played on both sides. Or not both sides, I mean, like by both teams. I mean, it's pretty modest stat line here for both, or for the Patriots at least, just pretty modest. Nothing too big here, just besides that kick return touchdown, or fumble for the kick return touchdown. But I mean, overall, just not the best game played by the Patriots. And then as for the Vikings just, I already talked about it in this previous matchup against with the Cowboys. It was just bad. That was just bad. Horrendously bad. Only put up 3 points. Man, that was just bad. Kirk Cousins went 12 for 23, 105 yards, 0 interceptions, 0 touchdowns, and was sacked 7 times. They even put in Nick Mullins. Nick Mullins, 5 for 7, 54 yards. Dalvin Cook, I mean, he still had a decent game, 72 yards on 11 carries, but definitely not the stat line that you want to see from Dalvin Cook. Through the air, they just couldn't get anything. Justin Jefferson only had 33 yards on the day, with 3 receptions. I mean, they had 1 lost fumble. I mean, that was pretty bad. And then defensively, they had 1 QB hit, 1 pass deflection, 8 tackles for loss, 0 sacks, and 75 total tackles. I mean, just a bad game played by the Vikings. They just could not get anything going defensively or through the air. The only good part of that game for the Vikings was through the ground, but they couldn't even eclipse 100 yards with one of the league's best rushers in Dalvin Cook. So, not the best performance by the Vikings, but I do think that they can bounce back here against the Patriots. The Patriots haven't really played well. They didn't play well against the Jets, where Zach Wilson could not do anything. They should have scored more. The Patriots should have. So, I mean, it just wasn't looking too good. But as for this game, again, I have the Vikings winning by 2. I think this one is definitely a bounce back game that they definitely need after being absolutely destroyed by the Cowboys, losing by 37. They definitely need a game to come back here, try to build themselves back together, basically. So again, give me the Vikings by 2. Now, next up, we have the Texans at the Dolphins. Now, the Texans coming off of a loss to the Commanders by 13. Davis Mills looks like he is going to be benched. I can't remember who the backup is going to be. I believe it's going to be Allen. They're going to be putting Kyle Allen instead of Davis Mills. So we'll have to see what happens with a new quarterback at the helm for the Texans. But Davis Mills went 19 for 33, 169 yards, and 2 interceptions, and was sacked 5 times. Just not a good performance. Dameon Pierce had a very bad performance, something that we have never seen from him. 8 yards on 10 carries. I mean, this Commanders run defense is really good. They've really only limited a little over 3 yards per carry to the run game, and about 4 yards, I want to say, per carry from the quarterback run. So I mean, just not good whatsoever from the Texans run game. I mean, through the air, Brandon Cooks was back, 70 yards on 3 receptions. But really, that was about it. Defensively, they had 6 QB hits, 4 tackles for loss, and 76 total tackles. That was really about it. Just not a good performance by the Texans. Definitely time to tank, in my opinion. Just tank for like Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. Would have been, that'd be great. If the Texans just tanked. I mean, that was pretty bad. Definitely. Sorry, even though Davis Mills, he may have looked like a prodigy at some points, it's just, I think it's just time to move on. Even though he's still young, I think just time to move on to a different quarterback and draft one in the draft at this point. And then as for the Dolphins, I believe they are coming off of a bye week, so they're just getting healthy, getting stronger. I mean, I think Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle just need even more rest. Okay, I mean, I think they're just about to come back and just go off. So I think it's pretty easy and safe to say that the Dolphins will win this one. I have the Dolphins winning by 9 here. I think it should be a pretty easy one for the Dolphins to win. Now, next up, we have the Bengals at the Titans. Now, the Bengals coming off of a 7-point win over the Pittsburgh Steelers, where Joe Burrow went 24 for 39, 355 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. And through the air, I mean, T. Higgins, he's really representing that 8-5 on his jersey there. 148 yards and 9 receptions. Same game by Samaje Perine, 52 yards on 4 receptions and 3 touchdowns. I have not seen this man have such a great performance in like however many years he's been playing. I mean, he's been playing for like 5 years, and I have not seen this man do something. I mean, in a while. I'm telling you, this man, I've not seen him do this good. Like, I'm trying to look through his stats, see like where he had his best career season. I mean, maybe back in 2020, he had 3 touchdowns in 2020. He had 3 touchdowns in 2020. Or at least 3 rushing touchdowns. Not really sure. It doesn't really put up for what if he had any receiving touchdowns. But overall, pretty crazy game by Samaje Perine. And looking at the defense for the Bengals, they had 7 QB hits, 3 pass deflections, 5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and 77 total tackles. So they're definitely getting in the backfield. And Joe Burrow did his thing, kind of iced the game there at the end to win 37-3. Sorry. And the Titans, they are coming off of a win on Thursday night against the Packers, winning by 10. They really impressed me here. Definitely a surprising win. But I mean, Ryan Tannehill was doing his thing. 22 for 27, 333 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 127.3 QB rating, and a 77.5 QBR. Derrick Henry did his thing as well. Two completions on 2 attempts for 4 yards and a touchdown. He was doing his thing there. Through the ground, I mean, he had 87 yards on 28 carries and a touchdown. That's for Derrick Henry. And then through the air, Treylon Burks. I just picked this man up in fantasy. Hopefully he can do some wonders. He has 1,100 yards. He had 111 yards on 7 receptions. Robert Woods starting to get really used to the system. From what it seems like, 69 yards on 6 receptions. So definitely doing his thing through the air, which is very much needed. Definitely why they got him. Definitely why they got him on that team to really make up for the loss of A.J. Brown. And then they had defensively, the Titans had 3 QB hits, 3 pass deflections, 5 tackles for loss, 1 sack, and 64 total tackles. So it was definitely a big game by the Titans that they played really well in. But as for this one, I do have the Bengals here winning by 8. I think the Bengals have just shown that they're a better team, better performance wise. I mean, on all cylinders. So overall, very good game by the Bengals, and I think they can continue the streak and win by 8 over the Titans. Now, next up, we have the the Broncos at the Panthers. Now the Broncos coming off of an overtime loss to the Raiders. Big loss there. Definitely a little interesting how that one played out. I mean, they just left Davante Adams wide open in that one for 35 yards. But the Broncos, Russell Wilson went 24 for 31, 247 yards, and was sacked 3 times. Latavius Murray had 49 yards on 17 carries and a touchdown. Cortland Sutton had 80 yards on 5 receptions. And Kendall Hinton had 57 yards on 3 receptions. But that was really about it for the offense. Nothing much, really. Defensively, they had 4 QB hits, 4 pass deflections, 3 tackles for loss, 1 sack, and 69 total tackles. But again, that was really about it. Not much was really done by the Broncos here. They couldn't get anything going on offense, really, besides that running game. That was about it. And then as for the Panthers, they lost to the the Ravens by 10. Baker Mayfield had a terrible game, 21 for 33, 196 yards, and 2 interceptions, and was also sacked 4 times. Donta Foreman coming off a big game against the Falcons, rushing over 100 yards, and this one only rushed for 24 yards on 11 carries, which led the team in rushing yards. And then to the air, Terrence Marshall had 76 yards on 3 receptions. That was about it. Defensively, they had 3 QB hits, 1 pass deflection, 10 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, and 69 total tackles. However, Bravion Roy did have an interception, but that was really about it. Nothing much really coming out of these two teams here in this performance. But as for this one, I will have the Panthers winning by 4. I think the Broncos just haven't shown the best performance against the Raiders, and I think the Panthers can definitely exploit some of that. Especially through the run game, I think they can definitely do that. So I have the Panthers here winning by 4. Now next up we have the Bears at the Jets. Now the Bears coming off a 3-point loss to the Falcons. Justin Fields went 14 for 21, 153 yards, a touchdown and an interception, and was also sacked 4 times. He also did his thing through the ground, though, 85 yards on 18 carries and a touchdown, as well as David Montgomery, who had 67 yards on 17 carries and a touchdown. David Montgomery also did his thing through the air, 54 yards and 3 receptions, on 3 receptions. But that was about it for the offense. And then defensively, they had 1 QB hit, 1 pass deflection, 3 tackles for loss, 0 sacks, and 60 total tackles. And just no interceptions. Just not much really was happening for the Bears there. Besides Justin Fields and David Montgomery, those two really were definitely carrying the team on their back. But after that, that was really about it for the Bears here against the Falcons. They really just couldn't execute on much there. And then as for the Jets, again, a historic. I have never seen a game play like this by a team. Averaged 2.77 inches in the second half of the game. Not even like the length. It's probably about like 1/10 of the length of a football. Man, that was bad. That was bad. Or I guess 1/6 of a football. That's how much they averaged. But it was just bad. It was just bad on all sides. Really, just bad. I can't believe that was actually like an NFL game. And then Zach Wilson was also asked about, if he thinks, he had a part in why the team did play, or, if it was his fault, I guess you could say, if the team played badly, but he denied it. He was like, it's not my fault. My brother in Christ, okay? You averaged 2.77 yards on offense and you're lucky the ball wasn't intercepted like 3 times. You threw to the defense 3 times. It's just the Patriots had bum hands for decoration, could not catch an interception, okay? Now, you're just lucky. You're lucky, Zach Wilson, okay? You're lucky that doesn't show up on the stat sheet that you had 3 interceptions, okay? Because if almost interceptions was a stat, you'd have that, okay? Especially because you only had 9 completions. The team punted 10 times. The Jets punted 10 times. Zach Wilson had 9 completions. Let that sink in, okay? Let that sink in. 9 completions on 10 punts? 10 punts? That and the audacity to say it wasn't his fault is crazy. 9 completions for 77 yards, averaged 3.5 yards per pass on the entire game. 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, was sacked 4 times. Couldn't get anything on the ground. Couldn't get anything through the air. I mean, that was just bad. Defensively, they had 8 QB hits, 2 pass deflections, 8 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, 68 total tackles. I mean, the defense is what kept them in this game. This should have been a blowout, but the defense, the Patriots didn't play well either. They didn't play well either. It's just who played worse is who's gonna lose. And the Jets played worse. It's a battle. Who's gonna fumble the bag here? Okay. Who's gonna be the worst team in this game? Not the best team. Who's gonna be the best team? No. Who's gonna be the worst team in this one? And it was the Jets. They just played poorly. And just did not look good whatsoever. Now I believe still the AFC East is just completely up for grabs still. As of right now, the Jets are now last in the AFC East due to that loss, and the Patriots are now up to the 3rd spot in the AFC East from being last. But still up for grabs, really. 1 game differential for all of the teams. The Dolphins and Bills are, tied with the record with 7-3s, both with 7-3 records. And then New England and the Jets are both tied with 6-4 records. So still, it's 1 game differential. Anybody could really win that one. So it's going to be exciting to watch that one develop there. But just overall, the Jets played absolutely horrendously. Now, as for this game, I do have the Bears winning this one. On top of that, forgot to mention, Mike White will also be starting in this one. Zach Wilson has been benched after that. Terrible display. He was asked about it, I believe, today after it was announced that he'd be benched. He said it was not surprising. So we'll have to see. Maybe it's Mike White time again. Okay, last season they had a little bit of Mike White magic. They had a little bit of white magic, and maybe he can do it again. Sounds a little bit weird, white magic, but hey, maybe he can do it again. They are going up against the Bears, who I think definitely good. The Jets defense might play really well against the Bears offense, and the Bears defense might play really bad against the Jets offense, but the Jets offense is kind of bad, so it's like, who has more positives? And I think the Bears have a little bit more to give, or a little bit more to put on the table than the Jets do, so I will have to give this one to the Bears by 2. Now, next up, we have the Falcons at the Commanders. Now, the Falcons coming off of a 3-point win against the Bears, where Marcus Mariota went 13 for 20, 131 yards, and a touchdown. And Tyler Algier, there we go. I think I got it right. Algier had 55 yards on 8 carries. Cordell Patterson also had 52 yards on 10 carries, and also a NFL record, I believe, 104 yard kickoff return for a touchdown. Great play made by him. Kyle Pitts did injure, I believe, did he either tore? No, he didn't tear his ACL. I believe he sprained his MCL. If I'm correct, I know it is some sort of knee injury, but I do want to be correct on that because he is placed on IR. I believe he is, he is out for the season. But I want to say MCL sprain. I I do want to say. So, yeah, he's definitely out for the season. Definitely can't play on that. So that's definitely a big loss for the Falcons offense. Definitely something that they needed. It hasn't really been the greatest season for him. They really haven't been using him as well as I think they should have or should be using him. But still definitely a big loss. He was having a pretty good game in this one. And then as for the defense, again, the Falcons had that kick return for the touchdown. And then they had the 5 QB hits, 4 pass deflections, 9 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, and 74 total tackles. Overall, really good defensive performance by the Falcons, which really kept them in this one and definitely led them to win that one. And then as for the Commanders, winning pretty handily against the Houston Texans, winning by 13. Taylor Heinicke was named starter. Definitely did not disappoint. 15 for 27, 191 yards. Antonio Gibson had a game 72 yards on 18 carries, as well as Brian Robinson, 57 yards on 15 carries. I mean, that Commanders run game is pretty lethal. Definitely underrated in my opinion. And then as through the air, I mean, Logan Thomas, 65 yards on 5 receptions. Terry McLaurin, 55 yards on 4 receptions. Terry McLaurin and Taylor Heinicke, I think, are definitely a really good pairing. Those two guys definitely have a lot of chemistry, and it's definitely led to a big spike in Terry McLaurin's career so far. I mean, past couple seasons, he just hasn't really looked as good as he has been prior, but this season, he's looking great. And then on the defense, the Commanders had a pick six, one from Kendall Fuller, and got that one. And then they also had 9 QB hits, 4 pass deflections, 9 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, and 50 total tackles. And then another pick by Derek Forrest in that one to really ice the game. But overall, I mean, great performance by the Commanders, both offensively and defensively. They were able to get it done. But as for this one, I do have the Falcons here win by 4. I think even though that rushing attack may be really limited, I think they can definitely do it through the air, especially, I mean, even though Kyle Pitts is out, I think they can definitely still do it through the air. Marcus Mariota, I think, could still run the ball a little bit, decently against Commanders' defensive line that's been doing really good. Chase Young still unknown about how or when he'll be coming back, but I mean, overall, the Commanders did really good. They have a really good run defense, but I think the Falcons here should have the win by 4. Now, next up, we have the Buccaneers at the Browns. Now, the Buccaneers coming off of a bye week in this one since they played in Germany last week, so not much to say there. Just getting healthier. Getting the game plan sorted out, kind of sorting out what that backfield is going to look like, especially since Rachaad White was named starter, but Leonard Fournette has looked pretty good, especially in that one again in Munich against the Seahawks. So again, I think they'll just have to see how they kind of sort out that backfield. And then as for the Browns, lost in Detroit to the Bills by 8. Now I think I did say last episode that Deshaun Watson would be coming back, but it was 11 weeks, so he was banned from the NFL, so he couldn't practice with the team. So now he can practice with the team. So they just did, because he hasn't practiced with the team whatsoever. So he's practicing with the team now, but it looks like they're targeting a December 4th return. So he's not going to be playing in this one. It's going to be Jacoby Brissett up until what I want to say, week 13. Week 13, we'll see him. Again playing against the Texans. So that one's gonna be interesting to see. After this week 12, then week 13, that's when Deshaun Watson does play for the Browns. But I mean, they still kept it pretty close against this Bills team, even though having the entire run game shut out. Nick Chubb again only had 19 yards on 14 carries. Jacoby Brissett went 28 for 41, 324 yards, and 3 touchdowns with 0 interceptions. Pretty good stat line by him. 116.3 quarterback rating and a 63.3 QBR. Again, just could not get anything through the ground. Amari Cooper had 113 yards on 8 receptions and 2 touchdowns. Donovan Peoples-Jones had 61 yards on 5 receptions and a touchdown. Defensively, they had 4 QB hits, 5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and 72 total tackles. But really, that was about it. Nothing much really happened there with the Browns. Through the air, they definitely did their thing, but defensively and through the run game, they just could not excel, which definitely caused them to lose this one against the Bills. But as for this one, I do have the Browns winning this one by 6. I think they're going to surprise a lot of people. This is Jacoby Brissett's most likely last game playing for the Browns here this season, unless Deshaun Watson does terrible. But if he does play well, I think we might have a shoe-in for this, a little bit of competition if Deshaun Watson starts dipping off. And I think the offense through the air has been doing great. And this Buccaneers defense hasn't really looked that good defending the pass. So hopefully they maybe get something there with that. So I do have the Browns winning by 6. Now, next up, we have the Ravens at the Jaguars. Now, the Ravens coming off of a 10-point win over the Panthers, where Lamar Jackson did pretty good there. And, he had a good game. Lamar Jackson, 24 for 33, 209 yards. No touchdowns, but 1 interception and was sacked 3 times. Could not get anything through the run game. They are expecting Gus Edwards to be back in this one against the Jaguars, which is definitely going to be a big help because they really haven't been doing much on the run game since he has been injured. And then through the air, Demarcus Robinson, he did pretty good, 128 yards, 9 receptions. Mark Andrews' first game back from injury, 63 yards on 6 receptions. Definitely a big reason why they won this one. And then defensively, they had 7 QB hits, 4 pass deflections, 6 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, and 55 total tackles, as well as an interception from JPP and another interception from Marlon Humphrey. So overall, really good game played by the Ravens in this one. And then as for the Jaguars, I believe they're coming off of a bye week. I want to say, they're coming off of a bye week, trying to get healthier. Christian Kirk, he's had a great season so far, as well as Trevor Lawrence. He's had a great season. And Travis Etienne, he's really good, perennial rusher. He could definitely do something with that. But in this one, I do have the Ravens here winning by 3. I think it's going to be close. It's mainly going to be a heavy offensive battle, but I think the Ravens have a little bit of a better defense than that compared to the Jaguars. So I do have the Ravens here winning by 3. Now, next up, we have the Raiders at the Seahawks. Now, the Raiders coming off of a win against the Broncos in overtime. Definitely a much-needed win. Definitely a morale boost there, especially after Derek Carr's heartfelt post-game speech, where he was just kind of saying that he was mad that they were losing, and they come back and win against a divisional opponent in the Broncos, and continue to start possibly win streak here. But Derek Carr went 23 for 37, 307 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Really good game by him. Josh Jacobs, 109 yards on 24 carries. Devontae Adams also had a good game, 141 yards on 7 receptions and 2 touchdowns, as well as Mac Hollins, 52 yards on 6 receptions, and then Josh Jacobs with 51 yards on 3 receptions. And looking at the defense here, they had 10 QB hits, 6 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, and 71 total tackles. Overall, it was a pretty good game. I think they could have done better against a Broncos team that's really been struggling. But the Raiders have also been struggling too, so it wasn't that much of a surprise that it did go into overtime, but luckily they were able to win. Devontae Adams was left wide open on the 35-yard catch to win the game on a go-ahead touchdown. So overall, it was still a good game played by the Raiders offensively. The defense just really hasn't been playing well, which definitely kept the Broncos in this one. And then as for the Seahawks, they're coming off of a bye week, kind of just getting everybody healthy again, coming back from Munich. I think overall they still have a really good team, even though they did just lose to the Buccaneers in a close one. I think the Buccaneers, kind of let them come back a little bit. So I think the Seahawks, they still had quite a game, but still a little bit to go from there. But I do have the Seahawks win this one by 3. I think overall they are the better team, and a team that can win a lot more going on here, and definitely can make a pretty big playoff spot if they really try hard enough. Now, next up, we have the Chargers at the Cardinals. The Chargers coming off of a 3-point loss and a close one against the Chiefs. Injuries just riddled them. Mike Williams was coming back. I had Mike Williams and Keenan Allen come back, and Mike Williams ends up getting injured during the game and is out. So it looks like he is going to be out against this one. In this one against the Cardinals. Justin Herbert went 23 for 30, 280 yards on 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. He was sacked 5 times. Austin Eckler did his thing, though, 83 yards on 19 carries and a touchdown. Joshua Palmer, not Jordan Palmer. I keep mixing up the names. Joshua Palmer went 106 yards on 8 receptions and 2 touchdowns. Keenan Allen again did his thing, 94 yards on 5 receptions in his first game back from that hamstring injury. And then defensively, just has not been looking good. They had 6 QB hits, 1 pass deflection, 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack, and 61 total tackles. Just not much really happening there. You will have to play a little bit better, against this Chiefs team, and they just did not in this one. So it was definitely tough for them in this one. But they still were able to keep it close. They just couldn't contain the Chiefs from coming back in that one, in that touchdown pass, the Travis Kelce there at the end of the game. And then as for the Cardinals, they're coming off of a pretty bad whipping by the 49ers in Mexico. Not a good game by the Cardinals whatsoever. Another game where Kyler Murray is out. It looks like Kyler Murray is expected to play in this one against the Chargers, so that one's a good sign there. But Colt McCoy went 24 for 34, 218 yards, and an interception. And then Trace McSorley went 6 for 10, 59 yards, and an interception as well. They couldn't get anything off the ground, really. Greg Dortch had quite a bit of a game, 103 yards on 9 receptions, as well as D-Hop, who went 91 yards on 9 receptions, and A.J. Green, who had 50 yards on 5 receptions. Definitely getting the ball everywhere for the team, but just not much was happening. The defense had 4 QB hits, 4 pass deflections, 2 tackles for loss, and 60 total tackles. But that was really about it. Just not the best defensive performance by them. They just kind of just allowed... They were just open gate for the 49ers to win by 28, basically. It just was not a good performance on either side of the ball for the Cardinals. But as for this one, I do have the Chargers winning by 1. I think overall they are the better team. They can perform better, in my opinion. So, again, I think they're just overall the better team in this one to choose. So I have the Chargers winning by 1. Now, next up, we have the Saints at the 49ers. Now, the Saints coming off of a close win against the Rams, winning 27-20. Andy Dalton went 21 for 25, 260 yards and 3 touchdowns. Taysom Hill did his thing on the ground, 52 yards on 9 carries. Chris Olave had a game as well, 102 yards on 5 receptions and a touchdown. Defensively, they had 7 QB hits, 5 pass deflections, 4 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, and 65 total tackles. That defense definitely let them win in this one. The ground game wasn't really too spectacular. To the air, they couldn't really do much. So that defense definitely kept them in this one, kept them in the lead for the most part here. And then as for the 49ers, just had a game against the Cardinals. Cardinals could not stop them defensively whatsoever. Jimmy Garoppolo went 20 for 29, 228 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, was sacked 0 times, had a 131.9 rating and a 77.3 QBR. Elijah Mitchell went 59 yards on 9 carries. George Kittle had a big touchdown there at the end of the game to really seal the deal. He had 84 yards on 4 receptions and 2 touchdowns. Christian McCaffrey also did his thing through the air, 67 yards on 7 receptions. And Deebo Samuel had 57 yards on 7 receptions. And then on defense, they had 6 pass deflections, 8 QB hits, 9 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, and 63 total tackles. Jimmy Ward had an interception as well as Samuel Womack. They both had an interception in that one. They just had a really good game overall against the Cardinals. Not much to say there. They just completely dominated. But as for this one, I do have the 49ers winning by 1 here. I think the 49ers are definitely the better team here against the Saints. I think offensively, they're definitely going to be able to overpower that Saints defense. And then defensively, I mean, the Saints offense hasn't looked good whatsoever. So I think they'll have a field day with that Saints offense. So again, give me the 49ers by 1 here. And then for this one, I have the Rams at the Chiefs. So the Rams coming off that 7-point loss to the Saints. Matthew Stafford did exit the game with a concussion, and it looks like he will be out for this matchup as well. So definitely a big loss to that offense. It looks like they're going to be starting Perkins for the Rams. But Matthew Stafford did go 11 for 18, 159 yards and 2 touchdowns in that one. And then Bryce Perkins went 5 for 10, 64 yards, was sacked 3 times. Cam Akers had 61 yards on 14 carries. Sean McVay still sticking to his promise of letting him in that one. But I believe Darrell Henderson did exit that game with an injury. And it looks like he might be out for this one as well against the Chiefs. And then offensively or through the air, Atwell had a good game. Tutu Atwell, 62 yards on 1 reception and a touchdown. But that was really about it. Defensively, they had 6 QB hits, 1 pass deflection, 6 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, and 62 tackles, total tackles. But it was really mainly a defensive matchup in this one. But the Rams offense just could not really produce that much. So the Saints did end up winning that one. Then as for the Chiefs, they had a close call against the Chargers, but they were able to march back, score a touchdown, down by 4. Just left too much time on the clock. Patrick Mahomes went 20 for 34, 329 yards, 3 touchdowns. Isaiah Pacheco had 107 yards on 15 carries. Definitely a rising star in this league. I believe he is a rookie. And yeah, he's definitely going off wearing the same number as Tyreek Hill. Maybe just the number 10 in Kansas City is just the greatest number of all time. And then Travis Kelce, 115 yards on 6 receptions and 3 touchdowns. And then Justin Watson had 67 yards on 3 receptions. And then Sky Moore had 63 yards on 5 receptions. And then Jody Fortson had 51 yards on 2 receptions. So, I mean, Patrick Mahomes is getting the ball everywhere, basically. Definitely much needed because of the injury to Juju Smith-Schuster. Defensively, they had 10 QB hits, 5 pass deflections, 9 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, and 74 total tackles. I mean, the defense did their thing. They performed well on all levels, on all sides of the ball, but, that close one, a little bit of a close call there, but they still were able to get it done. Just left too much time on the clock for Patrick Mahomes to be able to get a comeback win. But the Chiefs here, I have the Chiefs winning this one, I think, pretty easily. They had the biggest spread of the week against the Rams, at I believe minus 3.5 points, I want to say. 15.5 points. Did I say 3.5? I meant 13.5, but it's actually 15.5 points. I think it's just overall, it seems like it should be a pretty easy call for the Chiefs to win this one since the Rams are putting in their backup quarterback Bryce Perkins in, and they didn't perform well whatsoever when Matthew Stafford was off the field. So it looks like for this one, they're going to have the Chiefs win this one. Now next up, we have the Packers at the Eagles. Now the Packers losing by 10, surprisingly, to the Titans after that big comeback win against the Cowboys. But, I mean, just offensively, just did not look good, or at least on the ground. Aaron Rodgers went 24 for 39, 227 yards and 2 touchdowns. Aaron Jones went 40 yards on 12 carries, so really just not much there. And Randall Cobb had 73 yards on 6 receptions. Allen Lazard had 57 yards on 5 receptions. But that was about it. That was Randall Cobb's actually his first game back from injury, going up against the Titans. And now I think the Lions and Packers actually have the same record. Let me check here. Maybe. Are the Lions first in the NFC North or second in the NFC? They're second in the NFC North. Yes. Man, it's been a while. It's been a while since I've seen the Lions at the top spot in the NFC North. But hey, back to the game. I mean, really good performance by the Titans, but I mean, Packers just could not do anything on offense. And defensively, the Packers had 5 QB hits, 1 pass deflection, 3 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, and 79 total tackles, as well as a Rasul Douglas interception. But that was really about it. They were able to lock up Derrick Henry. They were able to lock him up. Titans only, or at least Derrick Henry had 87 yards. It was sub 100. But, I mean, Ryan Tannehill was just throwing bombs on him. So, and Traylon Burks had a career high game with 111 yards as well. So, I mean, the Packers just could not contain that air attack. So it's definitely hard for them to beat them there. And then as for the Eagles, winning another close one, surprisingly close one to the Colts. Eagles only winning by 1. They're reacting like Patrick Beverly in that playoff series. Like, Nick Sirianni was out here standing on the bench, like, yelling at the Colts crowd. Like, bro, you beat the Colts, who is their coach is coaching their second game. Like, yeah, I'm gonna need you to chill out, okay, Nick Sirianni. But Jalen Hurts went 18 for 25, 190 yards, and a touchdown. Jalen Hurts also did his thing on the ground, 86 rushing yards on 16 carries. And then Devontae Smith, 78 yards on 6 receptions, as well as A.J. Brown with 60 yards on 5 receptions. Defensively, they had 8 QB hits, 2 pass deflections, 7 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, and 66 total tackles. But that was really about it. Nothing too big from the Eagles. They were just able to get that close win and that touchdown at the end of the game, but that was really about it. Just not a great performance by the Eagles whatsoever, for them to be able to win by 1 against a really bad team in the Colts. But as for this one, I do have the Eagles here winning by 8. I think they definitely need one against the opponent that they can dominate in. Again, kind of like the Bills, getting into this type of season where, type of time in the season where it's just really just trying to grind it out. They're kind of getting a little bit tired, but I think they should be able to beat the Packers here. I think I'm pretty confident in that they should be able to exploit some defensive weaknesses that Green Bay does have. So again, give me the Eagles here by 8. Now for the last game on Monday Night Football, we have the Steelers at the Colts. Now the Steelers coming off a close loss to the Bengals by 7 in TJ Watt's second game back. Kenny Pickett went 25 for 42, 265 yards, and a touchdown. Najee Harris did his thing, 90 yards on 20 carries. I mean, it looks like the old Najee might be back, and 2 touchdowns. I mean, he might be back. George Pickens, 83 yards on 4 receptions and a touchdown. Pickett to Pickens, great duo there. Pat Freiermuth, 79 yards on 8 receptions. Defensively, they had 7 QB hits, 8 pass deflections, 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and 70 total tackles. Levi Wallace and TJ Watt were both able to get an interception. I mean, that TJ Watt interception was pretty interesting. It was like batted into it, and then he just like got it. I mean, hey, a pick is a pick. So he's able to get that one. And then as for the Colts, again, they lost a close one to the Eagles, where they were in the lead for the majority of the game. They just allowed that late touchdown for the Eagles to win. I mean, Matt Ryan went 23 for 32, 213 yards. He was sacked 4 times. Jonathan Taylor had 84 yards on 22 carries and a touchdown. Pittman had 75 yards on 6 receptions. Paris Campbell, 67 yards on 5 receptions. Defensively, they had 4 QB hits, 3 pass deflections, 3 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 65 total tackles. I mean, they were doing their thing. It's just that last defensive drive, they just could not contain the Eagles, and the Eagles were able to score a touchdown there at the end of the game to win by 1. But as for this one, I do have the Seahawks winning by, or not Seahawks, sorry, the Steelers winning by 1. I think overall they are the better team. They looked really good. If Najee Harris can have the same performance that he did against the Bengals, I think they could definitely pull out a win here. If Kenny Pickett can just limit the turnovers, I think they should have a pretty good game here against Indianapolis. And that'll be all for today's episode. Thank you all for listening and watching all the way through. If you're on YouTube, make sure you go ahead and leave, click subscribe, click that notification bell if you want to be notified of all the videos that I do post on the channel. And then also, while you're down there, leave a comment if you want to, and then also share the video with anybody that you think may want to watch the video as well. And then if you're on the podcast version, make sure you go ahead and leave a follow and leave this podcast a 5-star review. That'd be greatly appreciated. But that'll be all for today's episode. Thank you for listening and watching all the way through, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.